forever run past even Adams, from swerve of shore to bend of bay, brings us by a commodious vistas of recirculation back to House Castle and Overdoing. Here's the hard sell anyway. Yes, the programme where the stick in the swill-bucket rattles back is today visiting Ireland for a green-coloured
Have a break.
Sam Finnegan lived in Watling Street, a gentle Irishman, mighty-hearted, a beautiful brogue, so rich and sweet. To rise in the world he carried a heart. See, it's sort of a tipping way, with a love for the liquor poor Tim was born. Help him on with his work every day, hit a drop of the catheter every morn.
Sometimes we in the United Kingdom forget that Ireland is technically a foreign country. I mean, it's not like it's on the continent or anything. It's only a few miles to the left. And we've owned them on and off through the centuries. We still have an uneasy protectorship at the top right-hand corner. So it's easy for a particularly stupid person to conflate the British Isles, which is a purely geographical concept, with the political entity of the United Kingdom, to which Ireland hasn't belonged in well over a century, and think of the Republic as an extension of the basic idea of Britain. I mean, what's the odd bit of genocide between pals, eh? And they speak the same language, right? Eamon de Valera, who's he? Yes, but of course it's a foreign country, it doesn't even have the BBC. Instead, it has a similar Radio Telefische Iran, which shares its public broadcasting remit and licence fee funding, but also carries adverts, and always has, largely because Ireland's a small place with a population of a mere almost but not quite 5 million, nowhere near enough to fund a radio and television service of any actual use to anyone solely through a licence fee, without that fee being several stages beyond astronomical. The United Kingdom doesn't have that problem, just so we're clear. So RTE has carried adverts since it launched its television service in 1961, and the commercial break we're looking at today comes from 1984 and apparently a showing of Robert Altman's California Split on the RTE 1.
Wherever you are, take the time to explore. At Canada Dry, there's one for every adventure. Canada Dry, explored in 87 countries.
This is pretty on brand with the movie in a way. California Split is a slightly forgotten entry in the Altman canon. It came out during a handful of months between Thieves Like Us and Nashville and got a bit lost in the shuffle. But it's about Elliot Gould and George Seagull gambling the shit out of themselves, each other, and the entire world. They inhabit a world simultaneously nearby and unthinkably far away from the kind of sun-kissed, blow-dried luxury that the guy in this advert both enjoys and represents. But he's very much the idealised self that gambling sells you, especially in the 70s and 80s. With that perm, he looks a bit like how Elliot Gould's character probably pictures himself in his head on a winning streak. Anyway, it looks like this is going to be for either an airline or some kind of high-end of medium-class liquor, like a martini or something. It's actually for pretty rudimentary soft drinks. That's the 80s for you.
87 countries.
Datsun. Cars you know so well in Ireland.
That what? Cars we know so well in Ireland that you buy them and drive around in them, I suppose. On the surface of Mars.
For over 50 years now, built by the third largest motor manufacturer in the world, Nissan.
Datsun was just a name that Nissan owned, well, with one thing and another. And when after the war it became prudent to go under a brand name outside of Japan, what with the Nissan Zaibatsu having been one of the main manufacturers of vehicles and equipment in World War II, and their founder and president a prime mover in the occupational government of Manchuria, and later imprisoned for war crimes committed there, I mean, that's some of the worst possible PR right there. So yeah, Nissan was known outside of Japan as Datsun during most of the era of the economic miracle. By now, i.e. 1984, they've decided that time has healed those particular wounds, and are gradually phasing the Datsun name out, while introducing their real name to the Gaijin, as seen here.
From the Micra to the ZX, now known as Nissan.
They've also found the most desolate part of Ireland they could possibly manage to film in. Some kind of sulphur quarry or some damn thing. Because driving around quarries and that was still considered tough and gritty and vaguely William Friedkin in those days. Yes, the Micra is that old, and yes, that's what they used to look like.
Nissan, the name and the technology behind every Datsun.
Officially, the Datsun name was dead by 1986, but we had a dealership in my little one-mule town that still had signs bearing the old name until they finally fell off, sometime around 1990. And the name was resurrected a few years back as a discount brand, of all things, for the smaller markets, like third world countries, or the global south, or whatever you call them these days.
To the world, discreet, elegant. Up close, something else. Chimère from Prince Machiavelli.
I don't know precisely when in 1984 this was originally transmitted, but the presence of this advert suggests around Christmas time. Because it's not a regular off-the-shelf perfume like Charlie or Impulse. It's a fancy glass-bottled one with a man's name and a voiceover full of adjectives and portentousness. Not much to say about it, really, although the idea of the woman as a successful trouser-suited, politician. Building looks vaguely United Nations-ish. And it was a fashionable job for a lady at the time, of course. Anyway, that's a relatively new touch in 1984. In previous years, her discreet, elegant side would be represented with an evening dress and a long-stemmed wine glass, rather than an overcoat and flashbulbs.
Something else. Chimère from Prince Machiavelli.
On nights to remember, remember Black Tar, the light, crisp white wine from Germany. Whatever you forget.
Like a point. Even less to say about this one. It's barely half a step above waving the product about in front of you and yelling, "Buy this!" Or, as once posited by Charlie Brooker, a gigantic mouth bellowing the product's name over and over again. Which, make no mistake, is something that advertisers would absolutely do if they thought they could get away with it. They're only as subtle as they are because they're legally required to be. Never forget that.
Don't forget the Black Tower.
Anyway, this is, if nothing else, and it is nothing else, more supporting evidence that we're approaching Christmas. Crispy white wine from Germany. Why not? Named after what sounds like a place where people are imprisoned and tortured in breeze block-sized fantasy novels. Take them to the Black Tower. This has been a presentation of Home Box Office.
Don't forget the Black Tower.
New from K-Tel, Susan McCann's Sentimental Journey.
And more grist to the Christmas mill. The perfect gift for your mother or grandmother or aunt or... That's pretty much the extent of the audience here, isn't it?
A unique collection of beautiful, nostalgic music. All on one album.
Even Susan McCann herself looks sick to the back teeth of this. And who could blame her? Either this is an LP consisting of 10 to 12 renditions of the same song, with slight variations in tempo and the names of different places in Ireland swapped in, or at the very least, K-Tel thought it was a good idea to sell it on that basis. Admittedly, she did once have a #1 hit single in Ireland, but that was a good 6 or 7 years before this.
Join Susan on her sentimental journey. Out now from K-Tel.
Planet Earth in sight. Execute beam transfer. Show me these Quinsworth toys.
Okay, Dart, let's look at the scanner.
Okay, someone's getting sued by Disney. And it's probably me.
Jedi speeder bike, $6.99. Scout Walker, only $14.99. Cindy's new Super Home, $49.95. Fisher Price Activity Centre, $14.95. Chatter Telephone, $7.99. Tiny Tears Doll, $14.95. Monopoly, only $8.99. Evel Knievel Stunt Cycle, $14.95. And the Atari video computer with 2 free cartridges, £113.
Oh, for the days when you could just dress up as Darth Vader and do a 1/10 ass James Earl Jones impression just in order to advertise someone's local department store and not get a cease and desist order. That was just when George Lucas still owned the franchise. Disney will skip the cease and desist and just have you executed, probably on your own front lawn. Even though there really is very little, if any, harm in a department store employee cosplaying as Vader for the sake of an advert, and a lot to be enjoyed out of it. Even if it doesn't make sense within the Star Wars narrative, since it is set millennia in the past and countless billions of light years away, in a completely different galaxy from our own. So what Vader is doing anywhere near Earth is frankly just ridiculous, as I will be detailing in a very extensive letter to the proprietor of the so-called shop, etc., etc. Actually, judging from this, I'm not entirely sure the good people at Quinsworth have ever seen Star Wars at all, or have any specific knowledge of it beyond, well, it's your man in Spears, the one with the breath. And I think there's some queer robot gobshite and a wee dustbin. And there's some kind of a dog feller. I haven't a baldy notion if the God's truth were told. But never mind. This advert is actually semi-legendary in Ireland itself, in no small part thanks to the sterling work of Maurice Pratt in the role he was born to play, i.e. himself. Because Vader has to teleport in and out, the two characters had to be recorded on separate green screens, and you'll notice they overlap each other when they first meet.
Show me these Quinsworth toys.
Okay, Dart, let's look at the scanner.
Well, even that, it seems, was a compromise, after Morris raised concerns about the timing as originally set up, with both on screen at once.
Okay. Morris, you're losing the... I'm sorry, I know it's difficult, but you're losing the enthusiasm and the old drive.
The camera. Now, you said materialise, then I have to turn and look. Right?
Oh, what do you mean? Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, literally, when you say materialise, I'm assuming it has materialised. I'm actually turning at that point in time.
Yes.
Okay, but he starts to talk immediately, which doesn't give me,
Give you too much of a chance. All right. Okay.
The dematerialisation, however, worked out much better, with Morris providing one of the great chroma key reaction shots.
I'm impressed.
The biggest range of toys with many at last year's prices at your local Quinsworth store now.
Affirmative.
That's the kind of thing a spaceman would say, right? Affirmative. I don't have it, sure it's only feckin' Quinsworth.
The beat of the bodhran, the cream of the head, the unmistakable taste, the unmistakable sound.
The chieftain!
How Irish can you get?
Guinness is a beautiful pint, smooth as you like it.
Well, this break would have felt incomplete without an appearance for the Guinness, and that probably goes for the diddly eye music as well, so here's an overdose, quite frankly, of both. The Chieftains. Folk OGs here to put you sucker MCs to shame, amateurs at the game, bringing to the barrow like moss to a flame, appearing one after the other to speak in praise of the blackest stout, in terms vaguely related to the instruments they play, very slowly.
The song of the harp, the smoothness of Guinness.
What do I think of Guinness? Put a pint in front of me and I'll show you.
Well, that was vaguely threatening.
The dance of the fiddle, the bite of the hops.
Guinness has a style, a taste of its own, and it comes naturally.
The pure sound, the pure taste.
You just can't beat it.
Rich and dark, deep and rewarding. Guinness.
At a full minute, it's pretty long by advertising standards, but it doesn't really have a minute's worth of content. Even if you're a Chieftains fan, you can't get into the music because it keeps being interrupted by vague, quasi-religious praise of Guinness. In fact, it is almost religious, almost more of a rite, or even a mass, in Guinness's honour, albeit about 180 times shorter than the average Catholic Mass. And it's odd how it seems at such pains to underline how quintessentially Irish it is. This is Ireland. Apart from the fact that it's hardly a unique selling point in that respect, surely everyone in Ireland already knew by 1984 that Guinness was their national drink, and diddly-eye their national music. Of all the places that needed to underline the association to sell the damn stuff, surely Ireland itself was fairly clear on that point. This advert bellows its Irishness so loud, it's practically Fenian propaganda. Is the high-wattage patriotism just an inevitable result of selling Guinness to its tribe? Or is it something more specific to its time and place? Wary of reading too much into what might after all be very little, or nothing, I'm going to assume it's just a slightly heavy-handed marketing strategy. I know sales were in decline in the UK at this point. Maybe they were starting to feel it at home as well. Who knows?
No beer comes near.
RTE's breaks in this era often seem to have wound up with a handful of narrated still pictures, apparently as a way of super compressing several adverts into a small space. It's the sort of thing that I, for one, and probably most people in the UK, are more used to seeing advertising local events, nearby pantomimes, and the odd extremely regional furniture store, and that sort of thing. But here, that technique seems to be employed for full-blown, if relatively minor, consumer products. Like Hoovers, for instance.
Add the powerful Moulinex MX10 vacuum cleaner to your Christmas Moulinexing list.
So it is getting on for Christmas then. Moulinex are better known, to me at least, for kitchen appliances. Blenders and deep fryers and food processors, that sort of thing. They even turned themselves into a verb, meaning to blend, in American advertising. A Moulinex vacuum cleaner, therefore, feels inexplicably wrong. Wrong room. I'm not making bolognese sauce with dust boils. Wrong idea. Was a Moulinexing list a thing? I'm going to go ahead and assume that no, it was never a thing. Although it might be an attempt at a pun, in which case it's gone completely over my head. But then that happens a lot.
Tixol controls lice, mange and ticks. Tixol for clean, healthier cattle.
Ireland's farming industry was then, and remains to this day, one of its biggest and most important economic sectors. And as I said, it's not a very big country either way, so the adverts for manure and fodder and fertiliser tended to show up a lot on RTE, as they did on rural English ITV stations like TSW. It's quite possible that they still do. I don't know. Anyway, Tixol to clean the lice and such out of your keys. We want a demonstration? Just take their word for it.
Carolyn's. Taste the smoothness and you'll remember the name.
Remember the name? Chipsticks. I mean, Carolyn's. A cream liqueur that isn't Bailey's, which is why it's so very important you remember the name. It's soft and smooth and mellow as a horse, apparently, but not successful enough for a real advert. Although it is successful enough that it still exists to this day.
New milk chocolate roll from Marabou. 22 pieces of creamy pleasure in one big pack.
Finally, Marabou. An outlier in chocolate geography in that it's Swedish. Not Swiss, Belgian, or even British Quaker. Swedish. Probably perfectly tasty, though. It's the same people who originated the dime bar, for what it's worth. It does feel a little odd seeing what amounts to narrated still shots of billboard adverts for perfectly ordinary, non-niche, non-local products like chocolate and liquor and, well, alright, tick medicine. But in a strange way, it's also quite refreshing. It's direct. The utilitarian here is this style is much harder to manipulate people with. Although a long damn way from impossible. Just look at almost any given billboard advert for cigarettes from the 70s until they were outlawed. And that's some commercials from Ireland in what I presume to be December of 1984. The main thing that stands out is the slightly, but often noticeably lower budgets compared to adverts from the UK at the time. And not just because of Ireland's relative size. They were in a very long recession at this point in history. While Britain was about to enter a period of economic growth, largely as a side effect of amputating a quarter of our productivity, its neighbour to the left was right in the middle of an economic shithole that they didn't clamber out of until the 90s, ironically by which time everyone else was in a recession. The obligatory glimpse of Dallas-style luxury in this break is represented by a handful of palm trees and a plane that goes up and stays up. Sure and what you want from me, jam on it. Away alone, alas, along the...
Then the war did soon engage, woman to woman and man to man. Shitty law was all the rage, and a row and a ruction soon began. Mickey Maloney raised his head with a bottle of whiskey flew in head and missed him falling on the bed. The liquor scattered over them. Tim revives, see how he rises. Timothy rises from the bed. Where your whiskey on the place and cut him on dead, he'll think I'm dead. And I put it on, now dance to your partner, well the floor you're trying to say. Wasn't it a good truth? I told you lots of fun and spinning its weight. And I put it on, now dance to your partner, well the floor you're trying to shake. Wasn't it a good truth? I told you lots of fun and spinning its weight.
You've been watching a Bob the Fish production. Thanks! If you haven't found it already, be sure to check out our website at bobthefish.org.uk. Literally hundreds of videos not unlike this one that will make you laugh, think and realise new things or your money back. Which works out great because they're all absolutely free. All of this is possible thanks to the not unique way that Bob the Fish productions are paid for by you, the viewing public, via Patreon. For a donation of as little as £1 a month, not only do you ensure that I still have food and shelter so I can carry on making these programmes, but you could become eligible for a whole host of cool extras. New video essays, special event live streams, all my content a week in advance, and my book on the history of the BBC, Rule the Waves, chapter by chapter as it's written. And some cake, if you go out and buy a cake and eat it while you're watching. And if you don't want to support on a monthly basis, you can make a one-off donation via Coffee. It all helps stave off scurvy. bobthefish.org.uk. You make it what it is.